Great. So we are recording the session now. So just to warm up a bit for us to understand how to use the mirror board if we don't know it already, I have here a feeling circle. So I would like you to join the mirror board and put a dot on how are you feeling today? What is your level of energy to join our session? So you can just find these dots here on the left-hand side and just drag to the feeling that you're experiencing right now. So we're going to give a few minutes for you to do that while we wait for other people to come. And I will share the mirror board again for the ones that joined right now.
So if you're new to Miro, just the main activity you'll need to learn about is using the sticky function. So you just click on that on the left-hand side there, add a sticky note and drop it onto, click on the board, it'll drop there, and then type away, and you can resize that. You can move it around like that by dragging it. You should find the option down the bottom right to zoom out, zoom in, and then scroll around the board with your mouse or trackpad left to right and zoom back in. And that's that. You can change your color of your stickies up here. Great. Is everybody able to join the mirror board? Are there any problems joining the mirror board? Is everybody able to find where we are here? If you have any problems, just raise your hand. We're happy to help. Put it in chat.
Yes, so let's see how we're feeling today. So we're peaceful. Wow. We are trusting, responsive, thankful. This is a very good one to be feeling today. Aware, creative, excited, energetic. No one feeling sexy today, but you know, maybe we can get there by the end of today's session.
There are people who are hopeful.
Great.
Trusting. Okay, that's useful. What do we have here? Thoughts. Yeah, thoughtful. Content is this one. Great. Pensive.
Awesome.
Great.
Wide variety of feelings. Great. So yeah, I think we can get started with our workshop, and always feel free to use the chat if you have anything, any questions, comments, and we'll be looking at that as well. And I'll pass it over to Joss to start the workshop.
Thanks, Yasmin. Great to see everyone here and be part of this conversation. We also have Manali, who's part of our team today. Good to see you, Manali. Myself and Yasmin will be facilitating the workshop. And if you have any questions, comments, you can put them in chat. Manali will pick those up. There'll be a recording, as mentioned, afterwards. And we have about 90 minutes here today. Sorry for the short delay getting started. But here we are. Hopefully it's going to be a productive conversation. Actually, how many people are familiar with the Iceberg model? Maybe put your hand up. How confident do you feel with this idea of the iceberg? Is this new to you, or do you already have good understanding of it? Raise your digital hand or your real hand, or whichever it is, if you have a good understanding of the iceberg model. Okay. Some people still looks like kind of half and half. So let's maybe have a quick discussion about that. We're still collecting people at this time. There we go. So the iceberg model is, maybe you'd actually grab a little graphic for us, Jasmine. I don't see one here of the iceberg model, so that we could take a better view of that. But it's the idea that there are different levels to a system. From the most observable ones, the most immediate ones, the events, what's actually the current state of that system, what's the output at this time. And that's at the top of the iceberg. And that's what we see in our everyday world. It's when we switch on the news, we see something like, oh, Exxon or Shell had a big oil spill in the Caribbean. And that's an event. It's something that happens, and it's the top of the iceberg. Everybody sees it. But actually below that, we know that there's a system behind that, right? There are systems kind of behind a lot of what happens in our world, the way we do things, particularly the way we do energy, right, is a system. And behind that, of course, is deeper systemic structures. There are trends, there are events and trends. So we might observe that there's an oil spill, but actually we heard about there was an oil spill last year, and there seemed to be one before that too. So this is part of a trend over time, and that might be increasing or decreasing. So those are the events and the trends that we see happening in the system, and they're important to help us understand what's going on at the current state of it. And yep, we have one here. That's the top level. We're actually going to deal with 3 levels in the model that we have. Little update. We're going to merge those 2 top levels, the events and the patterns. So that's that. And then down below here, the next level is the structure. So like I said, every system has a structure. It has a way of doing things, whether that's in finance, whether that's in education that we're talking about today, or this example of energy, right? There is an architecture to our global energy system, how oil moves around and how energy gets to us and the grids and so forth. And that's the underlying structure. It's about the rules, norms, policies, guidelines, and distribution of power and resources within the system. So that's actually getting to something a bit more systemic. The idea is these 2 up here are quite superficial in some way. It's how we often respond to the world. Down here, we're getting something more systemic, and system structure is part of that. So part of what we'll be talking about today, what are the actual outcomes of the system in education? That's the events and trends. What do we see? But then going down below that, what's the systemic structures? And we'll discuss this as we go through to give you about an idea. But then beneath that, of course, is this idea of paradigms and mental models that we talk a lot about in systems thinking, the idea that at the end of the day, the system is created by us. And that's constructed out of our mental models, our ways of looking at energy or food, or in this case, education, and what that is and why we're doing it, and ultimately kind of our embedded set of values and so forth down here. The idea is if we change that, we can really have high leverage in changing this system. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to unpack that, and how this is, a tool like all kind of workshops and canvases. They're just tools for people to have a conversation and start to discuss their meaning and understanding of this system. That's on the left-hand side. We're going to talk about the existing system there on its different levels. And then we're going to move to the right-hand side and we're going to say, okay, if we change that paradigm to a systems paradigm, what would that look like in education? And what would emerge out of that in terms of systemic structures and ultimately the events? What would change? What would be the headlines in 2030 or 2040 if we had a different systems thinking paradigm in education? So hopefully that makes sense to everyone, and we're going to jump in. Any questions you want to raise at this time, or are we all ready to? Have we all made it to the board, and we're all ready to get going? Great, sounds good. So in terms of timing, maybe we take, let's see. We'll maybe take 5-6 minutes, but how it's going to work now is we're going to give you time to post up your ideas. There's a box here you'll find, the left-hand box here. And I want you to share what do we see? What are the observable phenomena, the outcomes and the trends in the system that already exists? It might be something like lots of people, lots of students dropping out of school. That's an example. Or it might be a mismatch between workplace and education, what's being taught in school. That's an outcome that we see from the system at this time. So in terms of timing, let's take 6 minutes to get started here and post up our ideas there. So again, you just grab a sticky and try to keep it relatively small like that, and post up your responses to what we see as the events and the trends, what's changing over time. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. If you have any questions, raise your hand. You can unmute yourself, you can post it in the chat. We're all going to be together today, no breakout rooms, so we'll all get to hear the conversation as we go along. I'm going to put on some calm flow music so that we can relax and yeah, really think about what do we actually see coming out of this system at the moment. It's important to observe that. This is the feedback of the actual system, how it works at the moment, right? So it's actually important to look at that. Are things working well, or are there problems? Okay, we take 6 minutes. Okay, let's take a look at what we've put up here. Someone was very prolific in the blue here. The what, the why, how, when, with whom, whose instrument. 70% of young leaders dislike school. Learners, sorry, dislike school. High level of stress at report times. 1/3 of students change course. Many university students abandon, drop out. Organizations, just keep that going. Okay, sorry. Many students are unable to show their value in the exam-based system. So who is in the blue here? Maybe you'd like to share some of your thinking.
Yeah, so I confess to a little bit of pre-work on this, but I think a lot of the why is around what we're seeing. There seems to be a disconnect in the market between what's demanded and what's being supplied, what's in the factory, what's in progress. From my perspective, personally, I think there are some big questions about why are we learning, what are we learning for, and then we talk about the means of learning and what is learned and what is taught and how that is actually delivered. I'm sure that's just my kind of shorthand, but it goes to the content as well as the process, as well as the infrastructures, as well as the purpose of learning, and I think it feels like the mental model underpinning this is about what we tell ourselves about education, or what we tell us about the structure or discipline of learning in a sort of a programmatic sheepdip way, and it feels like some of the structures that are in play are very difficult to dislodge because of the massive investment in their creation and sustaining, and that goes for everybody from schools and education systems to the people, the actors, the participants, the teachers who are very much invested in continuing as normal, pretending to change. So sort of a bit of a radical view, but
Great points. Sorry, your connection is a little bit breaky, but we had most of it. They're good points, right? And let's keep a lot of that conversation as we go down the iceberg, because that's where a lot of it's coming from. But I think it's an important observation, a key one, right? Mismatch. One of the outcomes we're seeing from this system is the mismatch between what it's producing, what it's creating, and what's actually needed in the world. And then we can start asking as we go down the iceberg, as you were saying, what's creating that? Okay, let's stay going. Thank you, Michael. Barriers to entry to many professions. Yep. Overworked teachers and underpaid teachers. Yeah, anybody want to talk about that?
Yeah, hi. I put the comment about barriers to entry in terms of many professions, and I think that that there's a lot of school children that are just dumbing their ambitions in terms of what they can actually do and achieve, knowing already that there's already systems in place that are sort of going to exclude them from actually entering. Not that long ago, there was a program on TV, and it talked about I think it was about class in the UK. It was a really interesting program, and they followed a young person, an Asian young guy, trying to make it into law, I think it was, and he struggled, and those types of systems haven't really changed. And my own sister did a law degree about sort of 15 years ago, and she didn't survive very long in that. I'm from an Asian background myself, and this was sort of in a northern town. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that she only lasted about 6 months, and then she decided that there was no way that she was going to forge a career in law. And unfortunately, there are a lot of professions that were still like that, where people of color and ethnicity and diverse backgrounds are just excluded from.
Great, yeah. And it's getting to one of the kind of aspects around a whole pile of frictions, aren't there, when the world has become incredibly dynamic and fluid and happening. This information technology, everything's happening in real time, but this system is so still quite cumbersome in terms of these barriers to entry and, you know, having to choose up front what you're going to do for the next 3 years in university and start thinking about the career for the rest of your life when you're 17 and things like this are very mismatched, aren't they, with the kind of reality of the world we live in.
And
Yeah.
I'll just want to just say on top of that, when we've got, you know, fees to pay as well for universities, and then you've got students that are leaving, you know, university degrees with you know, up to sort of 40 or 50 pounds in debt, say 50,000 pounds in debt, you know, for the privilege of studying a university degree. I think that's a really tough thing for students to be, you know, making a life choice about if they don't already come from fairly wealthy backgrounds.
Yeah, a whole nother dimension, the economic dimension. And incredible that we're putting people in that situation when we should be kind of investing in them, right? Society should be kind of investing in them and setting them up for you know, helping them develop their potential for, you know, entry into society and so forth. We're kind of putting them in economic slavery to a certain extent. But okay, let's get going. I added some little dots here so that we could do some voting as we go along. Yasmin's doing trying to synthesize, you know, some of the outcomes from this, but also if you could help us also and grab a dot, you can grab up to 3 or so, where you see interesting ideas, important insights, so that we can start to surface them. Right, sorry, I'll let go of them. If you see interesting things here, so that we can start surfacing the key insights, and we'll be able to take them away and share them back with everyone afterwards. I'm just going to flick through a few more because we need to stay going at this time. But if we had that voting going, it would be great exercise also. So increase of bullying. Learning is still very content-based. No more teaching of ethics in the curriculum. Yes, we've got a very secular system. It's kind of decultured sort of education. Teachers becoming entertainers, students taking academic courses when better suited to vocational. Yeah, education is institutional. Yeah, it's narrowed down to kind of formal institutions and curriculum and 9 to 5 and going to school, when it can be this, I think, a systems thinking approach. We can talk about it now. It'd be much more kind of holistic, wouldn't it? Lower intrinsic motivation, COVID extended absence, more gender neutral bathrooms, more experimental learning, degrees for status signaling. Yeah, universities for status signaling. And that's still quite tied to economics. And if you can pay for them, which creates certain exclusions also. Okay, so maybe we stay going for the moment. Great to see you're doing your dot voting, and let's keep that going as we go along. Let's just move to the next section now for the sake of time. Here we're talking about, okay, those are the events, those are the trends, that's what we see. What's underlying that, right? We pointed there a little bit to economics and the way that can create kind of systemic and systematic exclusions, and other things about the way this system is organized, the way students go to school, the way they're put into batches based upon age, the way the teacher stands in front and broadcasts to the students, and they're supposed to kind of passively accept that and then give it back in exams and so forth. These are all systemic structures of the way this system works that ultimately create those outcomes up there. So let's take 5 minutes to post up, what do we see of the existing system? Are those key and important systemic structures that are really holding this in place and really define that system and create those results we're getting? So 5 minutes with some lovely calm music. Here we go.
Okay, great. So time's up. Let's see what we have here. So we have report cards, exams, subject silos, right? The subjects are not integrated in any way. First you learn about history, then you learn about maths, and then nothing actually makes sense in a correlated way. So that's a very good point. So here, fake assessments, poor relationship between learning, goal, and way of assessing. That's a good one. Someone that put this one would like to talk about that? No. Okay.
Just-
Yeah,
but
sorry.
Oh.
It took a long time to unmute my microphone.
no worries.
What I meant, what I can see in my everyday practice is that we have a learning goal, and it's not the way we assess it is really not actually testing the learning goal. It's just a fake representation of it.
Yeah. And yeah, don't forget to use the dots to vote on some of the important, insightful comments here. I will continue reading, but yeah, use the dots to highlight the ones that you think are the ones that you resonate most with. So let's see some other things. Teachers teach, students learn. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's quite a
yes.
linear system in that sense, isn't it? There's no kind of we're not learning together. It's like you're learning and we're teaching you.
Yeah, it's usually directional as well. The idea that teachers don't learn from students necessarily.
And the students don't learn from each other necessarily either. That's the funny thing, right? They sit there as atomized individuals, and they're supposed to consume this. When of course we know what happens in most jobs nowadays are about collaboration, working together. So that goes back to the point of mismatch again. Yeah.
There's this one here, increase responsibility from teachers to finance the educational system. Would this person that wrote this one like to expand on that?
Well, I wrote this one, and it's a little bit related to the fact that the teachers has quite a responsibility to really bring money to the university, to school, in order to be able to apply sometimes some of the actions that really are more oriented to improve the learning of the students. So private, public, there is always like limitation on budget. So there's a lot of more pressure on teachers to create workshops that they can maybe offer to the wider public, and then have more financial means to really improve the education in general. So I just feel that now we have an extra job on research. It was already like that. You need to bring money for your research, but also now for the teaching level, if you want to implement some more complex learning, you need also to collect money for that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you, Jairo. Yeah, there's one that has a lot of votes here. Not aligned with individual strengths and styles of learning. So it's, as Jaime was saying before, right, it's unidimensional, and you can't really, you don't identify the diversity within the students and within the teachers as well, right, and within the system that you have. So it's, you do one thing for everyone, and everyone should abide by that one idea of education, right? Some other things, knowledge-centric, taught how to memorize rather than critically think. That one, right? That I think Michael was saying before, what is learning, right? And not memorizing, but actually acquiring something from the school and then using that in their everyday life, right? So time's up. Great. So maybe we can move on to the bottom part of this iceberg.
Yeah, great to have the voting going on here. This is a bit improvised, but it's really cool to see you surfacing the ideas and see what's coming through for you people. So well done with that. Let's keep it going. I should also let you know that Yasmin's just finished her master's in psychology and education. So we have an expert in the room. She was studying forest schools, how people can learn, or children can learn, maybe best out there interacting with the world instead of just sitting in classrooms all the time. Okay, so here we are down at the bottom of the iceberg. What's going on down here? We've talked about what we're seeing. I mean, an interesting question that's popping out for me is we make all these critiques about our education system, but an interesting question is always why doesn't it change? And who does this actually work for is an interesting one, right? Why does it stay the same here? Who kind of benefits from it being the same is a question that's in the back of my mind, but we can keep that as we stay going through. So at the top, we talked about what we see as the actual manifestations of this current system. We then talked about the structures underlining, supporting that, the way that the system is structured, right? That linear thing we talked about with teacher transmitting information to the student. It's kind of formal in a sense that happens in schools. That's a particular kind of structure. It's not something that kind of happens everywhere and anywhere. That isn't really accounted for. And there's that, age-based cohort thing, so on and so forth. So those are kind of systemic structures. And down here, of course, we know behind all that is our mental models. It's great to see you working on it already. And what we're talking about here is what are those mental models that are actually supporting this system? We know they come from the industrial age. It's quite a reductionist kind of, it's quite obviously there's a reductionist kind of set of ideas behind this. Let's try and explore and unpack those. Take 5 minutes to post up our ideas, and then we'll have a discussion around that.
Great. Time's up. And we have some voting going on as well. That's very good. So maybe we can jump in and see the most voted ones for now. So we have here, student loans are a necessary evil. Wow, that's that's strong. A constant clash of generations.
Well, maybe that's, if we talk about mental models, that's the perception that they are a necessary evil. Someone want to talk on that? Or
I have added this one, and I, on purpose, did not specify if it was negative or positive, because I have a very, I actually don't like that is the mindset that exists now, but I understand why it can be seen as a necessary evil. So because nowadays still the reputation of the university, what is written in your diploma, it's still determines sometimes what the type of job you're gonna get it. So I think that it's very sad that we have a little bit of this. So you need to get a loan to get to a good university, particularly in the US system. And then at the end, maybe you get a job, but you still have a debt that's so big that maybe that great job not going to even help you to pay it off. So,
yep.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Thank you, Jairo. We have here certificates and diplomas play an essential role in the labor market. Yeah, who's the one that wrote this one?
I wrote this one.
Yes.
Well, I think that's easy. If you are looking for a job, the first thing you do, you scroll down to requirements, and the first point is usually bachelor's degree or master's degree in this or that. And if you don't have it, okay, you are out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and some people spend years in the university and schooling system just to get this degree, but essentially, not learning much from it. It's just to actually get this reward, let's say, in the end, that is going to give them some possibilities to find a job afterwards, right? And it's very difficult scenario for a lot of people. Education is highly political.
Sorry, give me a moment. Yeah, I wrote that because not so much focused on my experience in the UK, but I remember doing a bit of work in Mozambique a few years ago, and it was very hard to push for improvements that weren't aligned with the political interests of the governing bodies in place. So obviously there's internal politics to the university, but there's external politics, mainly because of the importance that educational institutions have for the country itself. So it's that was the point of that.
Yeah, it gets what I was mentioning about who wants this system to stay like this, and who wants it. It's to be perpetuated, and it's a lot to do with people who have power, isn't it? And the political dimension. But this one's interesting too. Autodidacts are not valued. Interesting, because it's a system that's supposed to be about education, but it doesn't value that education unless it does the educating. If you teach yourself, that's not really that doesn't qualify, unfortunately, in this paradigm.
Yeah, I actually put that one in because I thought it's fascinating that we're all learning things online now, and the ability to do so is so present and yet unrecognized. And if I think of my own situation, none of the work I'm doing I ever studied. I think that probably applies to many people.
Yeah, indeed.
I studied formally, I should say. It was all as an autodidact.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Everything I do in my work now, I pretty much learned, except for a few small little things. 90% of it I learned on the job, really. Yeah, and that's so true in a fast-changing world, isn't it? Where we have these new jobs. Okay, let's stay going. Well done there. We're now actually going to shift over to the other side of the iceberg here, and we're starting to think about that's the existing paradigm on its different levels, the events, the structures, the mental models. What happens if we change that paradigm, right? So this is the kind of idea of systems change and systems thinking, that you really want to change the system. You don't do it up there by changing, fixing problems, should we say. You actually do it by changing the paradigm. That's the highest leverage point. So we had that iceberg. Do we still have it here, right? So this is Donella Meadows' original paper on place to intervene in a system about leverage points, and she was saying that it's really down here. These the goals of the system, the mindset or paradigm are out of which the system structures itself and perceives and understands itself, and then the power to transcend those paradigms. And this is the highest leverage point. If you can change these, and you'll see that if you look for it across different kinds of systems, there are many examples. Smoking is one, right? We pushed for so long to try and get rid of smoking, and now it seems to be eventually, in some places, the paradigm shifting where smoking is no longer cool. It's not such a cool thing, and when you start to change that paradigm, then big changes can come out in the system. Before then, it's quite difficult. So that's the same with all of these complex systems, and it'll be the same with education. And we know already that is happening, right? The system is changing. We know that a lot of the foundational principles here, we've been challenging them for some time, and they're starting to shift. So what could they be shifting to? What would be a more productive paradigm that would actually, we talked about that problem of a mismatch between the system and society and what's going on in the world. What would be a new paradigm, a systems paradigm, or more holistic approach to education that would really set this up in the way that we might get the emergence of the right structures, the right kind of outcomes that we're looking for in the future? So we'll take 5 minutes to have a think about that, kind of underlying principles, values, goals, ways of looking at the system, understanding the system, and what it's about, what it should be doing.
Awesome. Let's take a look into some of the thoughts here. What are the mental models of an emergent system? See, we learn together with teachers guiding the process. Okay. Skills instead of curriculums.
Let's try and get some voting going so that we can surface the most interesting ones, the insights.
Yeah. Here on the bottom, the system supports the development of the full potential of the student. That would be wonderful. Some other ones. Learning is lifelong. Great. We're all simultaneously teachers and students. Yeah, and goes back to the idea that we're talking before, right? We should be learning and teaching at the same time and one another. Students lead the learning through the guidance of teacher. Good. Oh, would someone like to speak on that, on this one? What would that look like in practice?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them that are similar. This one, it's the idea that we could have maybe in some cases a more topic related where the students really lead in the sense that it choose the tools, it choose the approach, and it's more problem-based, challenge-based. We give a challenge and guide them to solve with their means and with new tools that we provide, but comes really from the student. I think that's a lot that nowadays that the teacher prepare in advance, then the students learn them and apply. But it could, I constantly learn a lot from my students. They're much more faster than I am to bring new tools that are more efficient. So I think it's really this what I meant, that they propose how it's going to be and you guide them, and then everything becomes much more like indeed a mentorship.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say that the word of mentor, right? And the role of mentor, it's something that I think it's undervalued, and I think we don't understand necessarily what this word really means and the importance of it, right? It's just giving the freedom to explore, but guiding the person towards a better path, right? To a way that is going to enhance the person's ideas of what they want to learn and discover. So that's a very good point, Jairo.
I think this one too, I wanted to pick up on. It's super important, isn't it? That I think the path we've traveled down with this kind of reductionist analytical, but really prioritizing these smart, intelligent analytical capacities in people, and getting those people who work well in finance or in science or engineering and all these different areas, but it's very much excluded the development of them in society as citizens. And as we've moved into the modern era and kind of left, a lot of community structures behind us, a lot of religious structures that support our values and so forth, we've kind of ended up in a world devoid of all of that, because education just doesn't help us with that in the way that it really needs to. So this thing of going back to the Greek idea of education being about, raising people, citizens for the polis, we kind of need that as a new value underpinning this, I would say, to some extent, or a new concept.
Great. Yes. Let's see what else.
Maybe I can add to that. It's I wrote that one, that it actually, I think it also encapsulates the complexity of the problem, right? Like we were talking about education being political on the other side, and the idea of creating citizens, in a sense, you'd think that education is at its best political, that's what we are all doing, figuring out how to be with each other. Like that's probably the highest thing we could do.
Yeah.
But
But then-
also it's why it's hard.
Yeah. But then, not to hijack the conversation, I think it almost goes a level below that we as people haven't figured out the value system that really is, you know, shared amongst us, right? So we haven't got to that stage. So it's like even a step below this, but let's get going. Yeah.
Great. So I think we can go up.
Super. So those are ideas, mental models, paradigms, new ways. I think it's also about identity, right? How this system understands itself and its purpose, or why it exists in the world. You know, a lot of people talk about goals of a system as being a really high leverage point, but I think if you step back, that's about purpose, it's about identity, it's about what this system is about and the way we frame it. So that's what we're talking about down there. If you can change that, that's really high leverage. And then out of that, it takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. The whole paradigm of sustainability, for example, that's taken a long time to rise and actually start to have influence of the world. But when it does, when that paradigm changes, things are going to follow eventually, that new systems are going to emerge, new structures are going to be built out of that, are going to emerge. That's what we're talking about here. What would emerge if we took those kind of principles, this more holistic understanding of education, we would get a different model, right? We would get a different structure, we'd get a different way of organizing this system, different set of rules, different set of incentives, different information flows, so on and so forth. Let's take 5 minutes to post up our ideas about what those might look like.
Okay. So let's check that out. We have the rise of learning communities like this one. That's interesting. And we had an interview in our last event on this series with Pavel Luksha, and it's interesting that he mentions a lot about this idea of learning communities and learning ecosystems that he calls. And it's great to see that being mentioned here. I don't know if the person that wrote this one watched our interview, but yeah, that's a very good idea of what the future could look like.
Yeah, I think if we talk about new structures, you know, it's going to have to expand outside the confines of the school, of the university, and it's going to have to connect across many different systems in the way that we can learn across many different systems and dimensions of our lives. So that is inevitably going to require an ecosystem approach, isn't it, where we're actually able to connect the dots across all those dimensions where we can learn and really integrate that into our learning so that it isn't confined to a school, to a curriculum.
Yeah, great. And yeah, since we're talking about curriculum is dynamic and responds to changes. Wow, great.
Maybe it's a big board like this, you know, your curriculum, where we're surfacing what's the stuff we should be learning, or what did you learn, and how can I learn best next?
Yeah, some voting system, right, on how we can have a better curriculum. Good. Start school when ready and learn what is of interest to you. That's a good one. I like this one here. Working and studying is encouraged. Lifelong learning is the standard. So I wrote this one. Would like to expand on that. No? All right. Yeah, but I think the idea here that the learning and education shouldn't finish once you finish university, once you finish school, once you finish your course. It's always embedded in everything that we do, right?
Yeah, and the other end of the spectrum, start school when ready and learn what is of interest to you. I mean, so relevant to my life. I don't think I learned much in school at all. It wasn't until I left school that I was actually interested in learning, and then it accelerated 100 times faster than what I learned in school. So why not just start when you're ready for that? When? Yep. Let's hear your thoughts. Did you want to say when?
You're on mute. Yeah.
Pardon me. My son started school a little earlier because he's younger. He's born in September, so he started school with his other friends, which are older, and it kind of made no sense because he's always behind because of that. And it's kind of crazy. We have this age we need to start school. I don't know how it is around the world but I think it's pretty common. And I have this other example where a guy in Quebec just didn't send his kids to school, and they were interested in stuff. They wanted to learn to read because they saw books and they were like, oh, this is interesting, I'd like to know more. And it's like, because of their interest, they learn really, really, really fast instead of like being pushed to learn that. And so it's like interest and timing is important, I think.
100%, yes.
Yeah, that would be a change in structure, wouldn't it? You know, Khan Academy, Mr. Sal Khan talks about, you know, do we have to put them into batches of age, and what could happen if you didn't do that? And the old, you could potentially get synergies, the oldest teaching the youngest, so on and so forth. That would be a systemic structural change, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else do we have? Reflection is the unifying tool. Yeah, having some time to reflect, right? Not having one thing after the other and stuff, and just sometimes stop, reflect, and think about it, and then continue. Um,
I was
living
thinking
alone.
there,
Sorry.
just because there are a lot of topics about like lifelong learning and industry and so on, and I was thinking maybe that would be something that would connect all of this thread of someone's life. Very Socratic in general.
Yeah, but also if you think about the discussion at the moment about, you know, automation and artificial intelligence, and the way we're learning is so much like these ideas come from a book, through the mouth of a teacher, through the ears of a student, down onto paper, back into exam with no one thinking about anything. It's like a machine that goes through. And that's not really viable, is it? In a world where algorithms can just do all that stuff so much better than us, there's going to have to be some thinking somewhere, or else we're pretty much redundant sooner or later. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think we can move on to the last step of our emerging system.
So this is what would emerge if we had that new thinking in place, if we developed those new structures. What would be the outcomes from that system? Sometimes people present this as what would be the headlines in 2030 or 2040 if we actually make these systemic changes. What would we see? What would we be reading in the newspaper? What would we hear when our children come back from school? What would they be saying to us? And what would be the outcomes from that system across multiple dimensions? But you know, from the workforce, from society, from all different dimensions. Let's take 5 minutes, post up ideas around that.
Okay. So let's read some of the things that you've put here. Learning is always contextual and purposeful. Great. I like this one. Education, let me see. Education adapt at the pace of societal needs. Right? Shouldn't be something stuck and rigid, but dynamic and fluid, and depending on the context, we adapt the way that we do things, right?
Maybe it gets to this one here. Maybe, I think this might be by Michael. There's no system of control. We're not going to get a fluid and dynamic and responsive system until we're able to kind of unpack that a bit and figure out how to move beyond it. Otherwise, it's going to be a system of control. Yeah.
Good. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's a good one.
I mean, it's the principle of emergence, really, isn't it? Things come together when they need to be together. Creates a more fluid, I guess, going back to that more fluid idea. It's not you have to sit there 9 to 5 and you have to study this. It's things come together when you're ready for it and you're interested, and the students are interested and they want to do this in that more dynamic fashion. Yeah, I think emergence would be kind of core to this.
So that quote is actually taken directly from the Tao Te Ching. So it's not my idea. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Since we have 2 minutes, maybe just read a couple more. Learners and teachers swap roles constantly. I think it's in this sense that we're talking about caring to learn and learning to care. Great one. Teaching and learning is at the service of well-being. Yeah, we don't really understand well-being in the context that we're in right now, right? Quality education is accessible to all. Self-assessment is in pace. Great stuff. Great, everyone. So, yeah, I think it was a very, very insightful discussion. Great workshop. I very much appreciate all your comments and ideas here, and something that we're definitely going to bring forward to our education challenge that we are organizing. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating, for voting, and for making all this effort.
Yeah, it was great to get your insights there around the voting and help us to synthesize it. And we're planning to do a graphic around this as we go forward so that we can better represent what's going on here. There must be hundreds of stickies here, or at least 100. So hopefully we'll be able to share back with you a clearer kind of vision of what happened and what we came out with.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, now for next steps, our next session is going to be an interview talking about the importance of systems mapping in the educational system. So here you have the link, you can click here, and I think it's going to be a very, very important one. So yeah, if you click here, you have the, you have the link. So I think, yeah, you just need to ungroup, sorry about that. I think you can access that now. Awesome. So yeah, if you click here, you go directly to our next event. And ways to find us, you have here our website, the LinkedIn, and the recording of the session is going to be available on YouTube. So yeah, here you have the website, the LinkedIn, the YouTube, and the Twitter to follow our updates and the things that we are organizing as a London hub. So yeah, the recording is going to be on YouTube. Here you have the link. And yeah, here you have feedback if you would like to let us know if you got a good understanding of the concepts today. if the session was informative in helping you understanding the context, and any ideas, insights that you'd like to share with us for us to improve in our next sessions. So just grab a sticky down here and just move to to this line. So yes, give us feedback. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Yasmin. Thanks everyone for joining. That was really interesting session. I actually enjoyed the conversation and enjoyed what we came up with there, actually. Yeah. So look forward to seeing you again in the future. And have a good day, have a good evening. Talk to you soon.
Bye everyone. Take care. See you.